Okay, so going to be making a video, so it kind of gets an idea kind of what's going on right now with my medical bills. Okay, so for those that don't know, I need to be elaborated or refreshed. Had a bone marrow transplant with diagnosed severe aplastic anemia, which is a 1 in a million rare blood disorder, autoimmune disorder, where your blood cells start attacking your healthy blood cells, and you basically organ failure, die. Um, you know, your blood counts go really low. So I had a bone marrow transplant, and by my brother Julian Alexander Palomo, and he is my younger brother, and he's about 6 to 7 years younger than me. So I have his blood in me that is 6 to 7 years younger than I was naturally born with. So that's kind of what happened. I went through chemotherapy, nearly died in the hospital for almost liver failure, and then made a full, remarkable recovery. Doctors were astonished at my recovery. Went home, recovered. It's a long story how it all happened, but here I am. So I've traveled all throughout the United States, starting right when right when the murder attempt happened. I had a murder attempt that was placed on me. 3 black guys, while I was homeless on the streets, sleeping next to a cemetery, or right like on the cemetery nearly, because I was homeless and I was beaten, covered in blood. They put a knife up to my throat. They were punching me in the back of the head, and they targeted me. And ever since then, I took off within a couple of months. Within a month, I left the state, and I didn't come back for several years. And throughout my journey, just leaving everything behind, I went to Colorado. I went to Colorado. I went to right near my ears ringing. So I find that really unusual. I don't know if it's an electronic device they're shooting at me with. But anyway, went to Colorado, went to Washington State, Seattle, Washington. I went to different parts of Colorado, like Castle Rocks. I went to Denver, Colorado, and all the different little cities in the area. And then I went to Anchorage, Alaska. I went to Valdez. I went to Gacona. I was in Juneau, Alaska, which is like an island. And I went to Ketchikan, which is like another island. You could only get to those cities, which is Juneau, Alaska, the capital of Alaska. You could only get to them by boat or plane. And I was in my early 30s. So every state that I went into, I always got blood samples done, because I was always checking on my health. It was a regular procedure that I always did to take care of myself. Go to the doctor. I figured out how to get insurance, if there was possible insurance. No insurance pays 100%. Or I'll go to clinics that would just bill me. And I've never been able to hold a job more than, I say, 4 to 5 weeks in the last 14 years. So I don't have money for insurance. So I have to rely on free clinics if there are. I have to rely if the medical office is willing to bill me, send me a bill, and I have to rely if there is any medical insurance that does cover at least some of it. And there's impossible for me to remember the number of times that I have had any kind of medical treatment. That is getting blood samples, getting an x-ray exam. I've had a lot of different exams. Like I've had CT scans a few times. I always get blood work done every 3 to 4 months, maybe 5 months at the most. And and so it all accumulated. And every time, and by the way, when I went to psychiatric wards with the crazy hospital, the reason they put people there is not because they're crazy. It's just to like restabilize the person for whatever reason. You go there for like a week, and when you go there, they always require you to stay there for like 5 or 7 days. Anyway, and then you got to go to these meetings and all this other crap, No, but anyway, I've been to so many doctors, so many blood samples done. that in every city, in almost every single city and state that I've been in, and I've accumulated. I've never had medical insurance up until I was about 35. I had medical insurance, but even when I had medical insurance, they still would charge me money. Like I had the a, a regular blood sample labs are like $500-600 to get the full panel. Basics is like $350 or something like that. So every time I could get the full panel, I would. Other than that, I just get the $350. It was just like the basic labs. So I would always do that every 3 to 4 months. I have been to so many doctors, so many counselors. They always billed me. And right now, as of today, I owe over, and I'm talking easily, if I were to estimate it, I would say about $150,000 worth of medical bills. Um, but it's at least over $100,000 for sure. That is for sure. Is I owe over $100,000 worth of medical bills, and I have no way of paying it. No way. So what happens is it goes into collections because I can't payment. They have these late draft fees and so on, and that's just kind of what happens with that. So, and then basically, to my understanding, because I've gone to so many different types of clinics, and I probably have a world record, like how many clinics, places I've been to, different ones I've been to, and how much they charge you for even being there. And they kept on sending me bills. I kept on moving. There was nothing that I could do. But it was the medical treatment that I did everything to try to take care of myself. So, to my understanding, out of the debt that I have with all the medical bills, none of it was ever going to get paid in my lifetime unless somebody pays for that medical bill entirely. And the bill is still racking up right now. Like even as of right now, I'm on Medicare, but they're still charging me $300, $200, to make these doctor lab visits, even whatever little it does cover, and they send me a bill. So that's been going on for a long time. But to my understanding, when you own medical bills and they go to collections, since I'm always thrown to the streets and I can't ever hold a job and I'm barely getting on disability since I was 35, what happens is it goes to collections, and if I ever in my lifetime buy a house or have an expensive car that I own, the creditors or whatever it is will try to repossess anything I have to then sell it to try to pay that debt off. So I will never able to own anything nice in my life. And I've known that since my transplant, because I had a bone marrow transplant, and even at UT Southwestern Medical Center, within a month after or two, after getting out of the hospital, I still owed like $3,000 or $4,000 worth of medical bills, and I had the best insurance, Humana, and I got fired. Never had insurance again. Never could hold a job. They kept on firing me. I think I worked at a couple companies for 7 or 8 months, and that was it. Twice, and that was it. But since the age of 28 years old, I've never been able to retain a steady job more than 4 to 5 weeks. I'd say about 5 to 7 weeks in 14 years. So I can't ever afford anything. The cost of medication, I have to either pay full price or I have to find a different discount. The bills rack up beyond anything you can imagine, but I will never be able to pay those bills. So I thought it was important for me to at least try to make a video about this. And I don't ever see in my lifetime, however long I get to live, those bills being paid. When I had my bone marrow transplant, I had $3,000 or $4,000 like still owed, and I think it was within a year or two, someone sabotaged my transmission on my car, and I couldn't even pay that, and I borrowed money from them and from my stepbrother, and I couldn't do anything about that anymore. So my life was just crumbling because I was being targeted the whole time. But nobody seems to want to believe me what these people were doing to me and anything I owned or had, car and job. So what happened was, I think it was like probably 5 or 8 months after, it was about 5 to 6 months after my transplant, I had to be admitted into the hospital for shingles, and they said it was like the worst they've seen, and they told me that I had to be there for like a whole week. I'm not kidding you. They had to have me hospitalized for an entire week. And when I got home from the hospital, like a week later after that, I got a medical bill in the mail, and I opened it, and it was 20 something thousand or $25,000 medical bill, and I had no medical insurance. So Dr. Riverscala and the doctors and staff at UT Southwestern Medical Center bone marrow transplant clinic would just send me a bill, and that's what they did. So I thought it was important for me to share this, that I will never be able to pay those bills. It's staggering to know how much money I own, that I'll never be able to own my own house. That is a promise, and that's a guarantee. Unless those bills get paid, I can't buy a house, because the second that I ever own or buy a house, the creditors will try to repossess the house, and until that gets paid. And even if I was able to put a down payment on a house, owning my own home instead of renting, it's not going to work, because the minute that if that house were to eventually get paid off for in 30 years, which I know I won't be alive in 30 years, then they'll repossess that house and nobody will own anything, because I owe money. And so right when I was 24, right at the end of 24 years old, I owed something like $30,000 worth of medical bills. And that's how I mentally had to function in the world, that I was $30,000, because like $3,000 or $4,000 from UT Southwestern Medical Center, the $20,000 to $25,000, it was about $30,000 that I owed in medical bills. Then they sabotaged my transmission. I had to call my brother in New York to see if he'd let me borrow, and he was nice enough to let me borrow. I think it was like $2,200 or $2,100. And the only reason my transmission blew out was because I was told, and I saw the guy, and the whole scenario, the guy intentionally sabotaged it. Someone else told me, he said he intentionally ruined your transmission on purpose. It was a retaliation. Anyway, I'm out of the money. Never paid my brother, who was in the hospital with me, Robert Palomo, who's a millionaire in New York, does royal weddings, and that was it. But as far as it goes with these medical bills, no one's ever going to pay them for me. I never saw anyone in my lifetime that anybody was going to pay for them, ever in my lifetime. But I've accumulated so many doctor visits, like it's insane just to even be, it's boggling for me to try to be able to think about how many places I've been and how often I have been in these places for a week or two. Or like when I was in Juneau, Alaska, they flew me on Thanksgiving Day to Ketchikan, Alaska, and I was in the mental hospital there for like 5 days, and they just put you in a room, and they feed you food and try to give you medication, and then they just release you. And then they give me a flight ticket or a bus pass or something to a different island, and it was like that. So I've accumulated so much money. I've accumulated so much money in bills that, I don't know who would be able to go through all that paperwork and see how many bills I actually owe. But at this point in my life right now, I would estimate to be 150,000, but I know it's 100%. At least I feel very comfortable. Not very comfortable about this, but I just know that it's close to $100,000 at least over that, because it accumulated so many visits. Like if you went to every single place that sent me a bill and how much it costs, and the late fees and the collection fees and all the credit, it's over $100,000 for sure. Over $100,000. But I thought I'd make a video on this. That's something that I don't think I've ever made a video on, is a staggering amount of bills that I owed. No one ever wanted to believe me about what was going on because I didn't have anybody that was willing to help me. Um, you know, between the ages of 24 to 28 years old, I got the evidence that you can look on my albums. It was something like 35 to 45 citations from the police department. So while I owe all this money at the medical office and they're firing me from all my jobs, they're also stalking me and being ordered from the gay community and transgender community to come after me and just write me tickets. So when I drive my car, and then they kept on messing up my car. I promised to God that they were doing this. I've had guys going underneath my car at a mechanic shop that had nothing to do with whatever and trying to lie to me saying, oh, we just needed to do this to get to this part of the car. And I've seen my car in front of me in a mechanic shop literally fall completely to the ground, like with no wheels. I mean, you could hear the weight of the car being slammed, and then they started threatening me. I mean, the list of things that I could tell you what these people were doing is that they would navigate to each place that I would go to and tell them, do something bad to this person. Put poison in his food, spit in his food, put feces in his food, put rat poison or something. And it's very, very difficult to go through that and try to, live a normal life. You go to a normal job, you just go to your 9 to 5 and make a life out of that. And that's what I was trying to do, but never allowed to. So, I thought I'd make a video on this. That's a lot of money to owe. Over $100,000 in medical bills that I owe. I've gotten x-rays, CT scans, brain scans. I've gotten blood work, like I said, over the last 20 years, at least every 5 or 6 months. And it wasn't until about 12 years ago that I started doing blood work every 3 to 4 months but I always got at least every 5 to 6 months. And I would regularly get any type of test done, scans in Alaska. I got x-rays, scans of my lungs when I was in Alaska, when I was in Denver, when I was in Dallas, obviously, all over the place. When I was in Washington, D.C., I go to the doctor's clinic not Washington, D.C., but Seattle, Washington, and the bills just racked up. I mean, it was insane, but I thought I would make a video on this. I don't ever see those bills being ever paid. I don't have any money. I'm in a position that whoever did this to me did not allow me to have a functional life at all because of the electronic devices they were blasting me with and the harassment and threats they were doing to me. That's why I kept on moving to so many different places trying to start over, and I was not allowed to. Because everyone behaves in a different way. Everyone does. So even if you have a group of 10 homosexuals, one of them may be murderous. One of them may be a child molester. And I'm not saying out of 10, maybe 1,000. Well, I'd walk into downtown Seattle, Washington, or Anchorage, Alaska, or Denver, Colorado, and there'd be 1,000 people that knew exactly who the fuck I was. Many of them would roll down the windows and spit at me. I'd be opening up a mail that I got at a post office or something, and somebody would roll down a window and directly spit at me as they were driving by. And I was looking at medical bills. Like I've had it all happen, and it became so dangerous because I had no money, especially since I was 35 years old and barely got on disability. So every time I go in and eat at a restaurant, I take the risk of somebody putting poison in my food, doing organ damage, or getting me sick, where then I have to go to the doctor and get flu medication or whatever it is that I'm having to get, and pay and have a bigger debt, pay more medical bills, and it just kept on stacking. So I completely gave up on that. I completely gave up on ever being able to pay my medical bills because there was no way I was ever going to be able to pay it. I just was pleading the doctor's offices when they could to send me a bill whenever they could. So that's something that is guaranteed. As long as I owe this money will stay there. As long as I owe this money, it stays there. I will never be able to buy an expensive car, which, or especially own a house. But it's very frightening because I'm starting to have some really pretty serious health problems with some other situations that are going on, like my liver and the counts, and they saying maybe it's having some damage to my liver, which immediately says I probably won't be alive very much longer. Probably not over in 20, 25 years. That I never know what somebody's putting. I can look up right now on the internet. What chemicals very specifically will damage certain cells and do damage to a liver. Because when something bad happens to me, they're going to keep blaming prior problems instead of saying that no, it is because this restaurant or this place that you went to put some sort of adhesive glue chemical in small portions of it over a period of time, and they did damage to your organs. And when you finally have organ failure of some kind, whether it's kidney or liver, I'm never going to be able to detect it and trace it back to these people or where it came from. It's going to be very convenient to just say it was your bone marrow transplant, it was just age and all this bullshit. They do this because they know that they'll shorten the life expectancy and commit a very homicidal murder act against me, and they will do it because they know the police officers are on their roll call. Every one of these people have these LBGT community, the gay community, and transgender have a network with a secret, have a personal servant access to the police department to make sure they can get away with whatever they want because there is no other law enforcement. So I needed to say this because given the fact that of all the counts that are showing up, and I'm not saying it could be natural, it could be just because of the chemotherapy, because I did have liver failure, but they told me I made a full recovery in the hospital, that all of a sudden, this is happening to me. And it could have been, but there's no way to be able to tell. Now, if you give a gun or poison to someone that despises people like me and is full-blown homosexual frenzy of the movement to kill any straights that talk shit about them or whatever, or just a homophobic crazy person, like a person that's gay, that's just crazy, that just wants to be able to attack and enjoy and kill and destroy, seek and destroy, to them it doesn't bother them. It doesn't affect them. They find reasons why to be homicidal, and they're not gonna, and they know that they have the police department to help them do it because they're not gonna investigate it. It's gonna be very hard to detect, extremely hard to detect. I can look up right now various different types of poisons and how to do organ damage to an individual without them ever possibly even knowing it, where you can damage certain enzymes in the liver, and someone could be doing that to me. And I can't tell you how many the times I have gotten a meal at a restaurant that people have either spit, thrown hair, treated the food and the environment, like when I was there, like they had done something to the food. Like I'd be eating my food and I'd hear somebody cough very violently and go and do that when I'd be at a restaurant. And that's, you don't understand that how age doesn't make a difference on how homicidal someone can be. Like for an example, I went recently to the doctor's office and they have this transmitter that every time there's a loud noise or some sort of commotion, the vibrations of what that noise causes, like some sort of wave frequency, then gets shot directly at me. So there's like a 70-year-old guy sitting in the waiting room while I'm waiting to get my blood test done, and he waits and he's just watching me like he has some sort of buzzard, and I've never met this guy. And he sits down and he just waits for me to get up, and like he can electrocute me when he wants, and I get up and he goes and he goes like that, and all of a sudden I move like this because I'm being electrocuted. And they're bringing this gun and this weapon inside the hospital, doctor's clinic. And I've never met this person. And this person, the way that he was talking to himself, and make sure I can hear him because there was no one else there, was saying, I'm going to do a murder-suicide. I'm going to kill myself and I'm going to kill you along with me. I don't give a fuck. You're a worthless life to me. And you can sense that in the fucking room. And I'm in a fucking hospital. And some white, hunky motherfucker that looks like Ken Cooper. Blonde hair, blue eyes, white supremacist motherfucker. And I've never met this person. I haven't even barely made even eye contact. I'm polite and vice. It doesn't matter. Now, you come across people like that in all sorts of environments, and you never know what you're going to come across. I just never know, because everyone behaves different. You can always think good of people, which I like to do, but you don't know what they're capable of doing just out of retaliation and then make themselves feel gratified that I killed the guy that met Michael Jackson, that was trying to tell the truth about all the rapes that had happened to his brother and him, and what they did to his mother, raping her, and the poisons and slapping and all this. They don't care. God does not exist. They live throughout their entire life feeling very contentful with the murderous behavior that they're doing. They don't cry. They don't feel. When they watch a sad movie, they don't feel emotional about it. They don't give a shit. You just killed these people. What you did, you don't care. And many people are like that. Not as many as there are that probably wouldn't do that type of stuff. Putting cyanide or chlorine to damage an individual's organs, so that when they go to the hospital, you can make sure that they don't live very long. Now, there is a lot of money that ended up disappearing. My mother got taken advantage of. My father got taken advantage of with my dad's real estate house, and his money was sitting in his bank, and a lot of damage of the relationships within the internal family of Frankie Palomo, Jillian Alexander Palomo, and me and my mother. Now there's triplets. Now Jillian was twins. Marco's identical twin as well. So there was a lot of damage in that, and these homosexuals, they want to make sure I don't have access or have any say in this. So even if I want nothing to do with it and haven't with it for many, 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 many years, it doesn't matter. To someone else that wants to put chlorine inside my fucking food and just small portions of it, I'll never know. But that person's going to say, I want to make sure they don't get money down here. I'm going to get rid of their life. Yeah, my gay member Julian, my gay member Marco, and we're fellow gays, we're fellow faggots. That's the way that they process. They don't care. I could have saved 100,000 fucking homeless people. They wouldn't give a god. They wouldn't care anything. They could have. They don't give a shit about any of it. They could have seen a little kid get killed. They don't care. They don't give a shit about human life. They just, I want this person to be placed in a coffin, die in a hospital, and I could scold them into an afterlife to say where they're going to go, and you don't get to live in this world. And there's no other purpose other than evil and dark. There's no other purpose. They don't want me to have anything good in my life. Nothing. But I think it's very important for me to talk about, because this is one of the reasons that scares me so much. Because I had to place all this on YouTube and on Facebook, not out of will, not because I just wanted to. I had no choice. Because at some point, it will unravel, to a death sentence, and they are going to be laughing. They just keep sending an assembly line of just people, and it never stops. You keep telling more people, there's so many people involved, it becomes very, very bad. And I could go on, and I'm not explaining to you what all the circumstances that are going on still to this very day. Every time I go to the grocery store, every time I go to the doctor's office, there's thousands of things that are going on that it's just enemies. They always want to engage. They always want to say something to me. They always want to say, persecute me. You're going to die. They're giving me orders to stop, right where you are and do what I tell you to do. Up and down the elevators, they all know where I'm going and walking. So I say this because hopefully the only way I ever see myself owning a house and paying my medical bills and getting healthy is if I have a lot of money. That's the only way, because I would have to be eating nothing but like Subway and beans and be in a healthy environment, because the stress that this is bringing is also very contagious. But I'll never be able to pay those bills, and I don't ever think about it, even though it is very depressing. I don't think about it because it's impossible for me to pay that. It's not practical. Over $100,000 in medical bills and all the scans that I've had, doctor visits. Every time I went to UT Southwestern Medical Center at the bone marrow transplant clinic there, it was like $800, $700 each visit. And I was going there like once a month, once every couple of months. And that was on the side of going to other clinics, a physical physician, a physical therapist. The list goes on. But anyway, I thought I'd make a video on this that hopefully this is informative. But I don't ever think about it. I think it would be such a blessing for someone to be able to pay all those medical bills. But I personally will never be able to own my own home. And that is very, very hurtful. That is very emotional to me because no matter what I would do in my life, college degree, I have to have a lot of money in order to even pay that medical bills to even own a house. So if I bought a house, what does a house nowadays cost? And I'm talking about the very poor ends, not middle class, like poor ends. It's like $250,000 nowadays. Like the house that I grew up in, that my dad owned, my mother owned, that market value right now is at about $325,000. $325,000 is what the market value of my old house I grew up in is now. And I grew up in the smallest house in Carrollton. 3-bedroom, it was like 1,400 square feet. Big backyard, front yard, but that's what that is. So, I've looked up online cheap houses, and for $250,000 to $100,000, you could buy a house, but it's going to be like in the super ghettos, rundown house for $250,000. Other than that, you won't be able to own anything. You could buy condos. I've never really looked much into that or any of that stuff, but owning a home house is like at least $250,000. $250,000 at the cheapest. So I'll never be able to own my own. I have to pay those medical bills, and then I have to figure out, which I'm in a boat with that with a lot of people, but can't own their own home, but because I got many other situations. But there's nothing nice I will be able to own, nothing expensive I can own, very expensive ever. Those medical bills will always need to get paid before that will never leave. And everything from even owning a bank account is something that I don't even want to own a bank account because, other than my PayPal card, because if I own a bank account, then they'll find ways to then go into my bank account and just start stealing money from me. So that I don't ever, the little money that I have from disability, the $1,400 that I get, from disability is just, gets stolen from me because they're just trying to pay medical bills and costs, and they find legal matters to maybe to do it, or some way some crooked homosexual figures out who I am and they want to steal the money. But anyway, I don't know what other ways to think that I ever be able to pay other than go to Las Vegas and try to gamble, and I don't gamble. That's the only way, or win the lottery, right? That's the only way that Bill's ever going to own, and I'm ever going to own a nice car. I will never own a nice car. Nothing new. And when I say a nice car, I'm not even. I will never own a brand new car. That's for sure. That I do know. If I were to ever own anything, it was always going to be probably like a. It's always staggering because I'm always going to be in debt, regardless. It's I live on the very poorest ends of life. When it comes to the U.S. cars and $3,000 car, I don't have anything other than a backpack and a lot of bills, medical bills that just keep raking up, and they just keep raking up. So I owe over $100,000, and but if I were to estimate, it would be it's over 100,000, but I would estimate to about 150,000 of everything. That's the money I owe. It's never going to get paid. Never be able to own anything really, really expensive or nice for myself.